general public to extract transparency and accountability, actual Grama Sabha and how it functions, mechanism of accountability of, these are all accountability and this thing, check and balance and all, accountability and transparency, political party influence on people's decision, and mediation at grassroots level and conflict resolution, how it is done. Then this is more about inclusiveness and other things, child participation in and decision making, please clarify, child friendly local government, because we had sessions on that, how state, local governments provide technical assistance to disability groups, what challenges to face to mainstream people with disabilities, community inclusiveness for voiceless community, what is the thing, agriculture, labor and caste, is there any linkage and other things. Challenges when KILA was formed, how does KILA motivate government to enjoy the full autonomy? These are the basic questions they just prepared, but it covers everything. So I can just turn it and so
I have time till
now it can go up to
1. Okay. Now some other questions will be answered in my presentation, at the end of which then I'll... In the presentation means my oral presentation. See, by now they would have told you that Kerala is a leader in the country in decentralization, both urban and rural. Though urban decentralization has not been measured independently by Government of India. So nobody knows which is the number one state in decentralization in urban areas. But there is a devolution index which is prepared annually, but I think this year's index has not been prepared. The last index was prepared in 2016 by Tata Institute of Social Sciences for the Ministry of Panchayati Raj. And in that, if I go through some points, you'll understand where Kerala stands and why it stands high. Kerala's index is 0.72. I don't want to get into the components of that. Broadly, it has policy and practice. There are two broad set of indicators and they merge it according to an objective criteria. In policy, Kerala's index is 0.65 and in practice 7.9. And the next state is Maharashtra, where the total index is 0.54, but in policy it's only 0.40. So Kerala's policy is 0.65, the next best state is 0.40, which means it is a well-structured policy. That's the point I wanted to tell you. And in total decentralization also, it's ahead of rest of the country. Karnataka being third with 0.5 total, Tamil Nadu with 0.47 and Gujarat with 0.45. Here again there is another point to be noted. Tamil Nadu started its decentralization post-independence. I mean, it had a very strong local government system right from the independence day. Maharashtra and Gujarat went in, they were the first decentralizers in India, the late 50s, early 60s. And Karnataka went in for a decentralization, as Mr. Meenakshi Sundaram must have told you, in the 80s. But post-constitutional amendment, when it became mandatory to have elected local governments, no state in India has really taken off, barring some initiatives at Sikkim, Himachal, and to some extent Rajasthan. So Kerala was the leader post the amendment. And interestingly, Kerala is well known for what is called a public action model. Amartya Sen has made it very famous, where people come, not an agitation, people move the government and government is responsive. And through this grassroots action by people, political parties, sometimes caste groups, sometimes religious groups, there has been a kind of a responsive state leading to what is called public action. In spite of Kerala's public action model, Kerala did not have strong local governments till 1995-96. So that way it is a post-constitutional amendment phenomenon. And another interesting thing, by now you know, in the independent, though Kerala, though India became independent in 47, the state was formed in 1956. And in the last 60 years, only one government has ever come back to power, which means every 5 years, governments change. So the decentralization in a way started on 2nd of October 1995. So we are exactly 22 years ago. It started with a kind of a devolution of institutions and staff. And then the elections came, the government changed, and we started what is called People's Plan, which you know by now. But in spite of governments, there have been good policy continuity in the last 22 years with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is a 7th government. So across 7 governments of 2 political formations, the core of decentralization has been retained, which is not easy in any context, national or state. Then what is Kerala's decentralization remembered for? As persons from other countries, what are the takeaways of Kerala's decentralization? So the big macro point is getting the politics of decentralization right. That's very important. We can tell you how to do it. I can tell you in 2 hours how exactly to decentralize. That is from the administrative point of view. But the politics of decentralization, partly we were lucky, partly it was a conscious thing. The macro politics of decentralization. Why should decentralization be on the agenda? What is the reason? Is there any compelling reason? Kerala was a relatively well-developed state. So what brought it? That was thanks to 2 great stalwarts, particularly from the left, the late EMS Namboodiripad, who has the distinction of being the first elected communist leader anywhere in the world. He was elected as chief minister in 1957. So he got the macro thing clear. Participatory democracy is very important, and he set the ideological agenda for the left to follow. On the right, there was a Gandhian kind of chief minister who is still active in politics, Mr. A.K. Antony. He strongly believed in decentralization. So together with Mr. Antony and EMS, representing the 2 political formations, the macro politics was, because a lot of questions get asked. In Kerala is a very debating kind of society, and it's a political society. So a lot of questions, nuanced questions asked. What do you gain by decentralization? Why should you decentralize? So that was tackled by, thanks to these 2. For want of time, I cannot get into details. Another important thing, because of this, the MLAs, the legislators, who all over India, they say the legislators don't agree to decentralization because they lose some of their political power. But in Kerala, we didn't have a problem with the legislators because both the political leaders clearly stated not only that decentralization is required, but MLA's role is in the assembly making law and not development. So distinguishing an MLA's role as not a developmental role, but a legislator role, a superintendent's role, an oversight role. They made it very clear. And that was accepted at that point of time. Once it is accepted, it's a kind of thing. Then the politics of decentralization has a lot to do with officials. Though officials are not political in that sense, it is officials who oppose decentralization all over the world. And in the rest of India, the officials are scared of working with local governments. So how did Kerala handle that? So it is a compromise. We said we will not disturb your cadre. You will belong to the state cadre. Your promotions will be based on the cadre. So you will not lose anything. Your salary will be continued to be paid by government. But you will move to the local governments. So we came out with a very, very interesting thing. It was written in as many words. The work and worker will go together. It's a very simple formulation. Because by decentralization, we don't create much new work. Somebody was doing some work, you transfer it to a local government. So when we transferred work to local governments, we said the worker will move with it. So if the primary health center is transferred to a panchayat, the doctor and the staff down to the sweeper move along with it. So this formula was accepted politically, and the employees also didn't resist because there was a political will and they also were not losing anything. So in that sense, they could convince the employees. Otherwise, of all the states in the country, Kerala has the most powerful employees unions. And they could have, and they are political unions, both the left and the right. So they could have stopped it. So that way, the politics of decentralization got in the support of the officials also. Then a very interesting question, which I was also very keen to know. Typically in any given situation, about 40% of we have political gram panchayat. The same politics in the state is followed up to the village panchayat level. In rest of India, barring West Bengal and I think one more state, it is all supposed to be a political panchayat, non-political panchayats. So when in Kerala, at any point of time, whoever is ruling, 40% of the panchayats will be with the opposition. 40% of all local governments will be with opposition. Sometimes it could be as high as 45%. So, will government like to pull out, have no influence in, or have very reduced influence in 40 or 45% of the area? It's a very, very challenging political decision. But somehow, our people decided, yes, the decentralization will be real, we will not interfere. What functions are with local governments, even if they are local governments of the opposition, we will honor them and there will be no interference. Zero. And that has held on for the last 22 years, which is one of the reasons for the success of decentralization. Why? The 40% opposition people, when they come to power, also realize, yes, we held power when we are in opposition. So let's keep it, it will help us also. So this is the politics of decentralization. Then the next big takeaway is the management of decentralization. How do you administer decentralization? It's very easy to say decentralize. You suddenly decentralize, everything will fall flat. Because our system is geared for centralized governance. Particularly those states which were colonial, they were all, every system, including a small report or a way an officer is structured, way an office is structured, they are all geared for centralized governance, basically by the colonial powers. So, once you start tinkering with it, if you're not very careful, the whole thing may collapse. So, administering or managing decentralization was a task. You must have read in literature that if you suddenly decentralize, your economy will collapse, your finances will collapse, your administration will collapse, there will be disorder, people will be very angry, a lot of corruption will come. So, there are a lot of fears, genuine fears. So, probably more than the politics of decentralization, Kerala's success is due to managing this very efficiently, managing this transition without upsetting finance, development, governance and all that. So how did you do it without upsetting the finance? They must have told you we transferred 1/3 of our development funds. Okay, in India, there used to be a distinction which is now they are trying to get rid of plan and non-plan. Plan means development, non-plan means routine maintenance. So Kerala decided to give 1/3 of plan, which means 1/3 of new development expenditure to the local governments. Earlier they must have been getting some 2% or 3%. So from 2% to 33%, where do you get the money? Some people will be starved. And there could be total kind of lopsidedness. Suddenly one sector of the state will not get funds. There are high risks. So how did Kerala go about it? What they did was, we have an idea, if you look at the macro expenditures, what kind of things get done at the village level, at the intermediate level, at the district level. So a back of the envelope calculation was made and they said it's roughly 33%. Then second, they untied it. We are all tied to different programs, thousands of programs, not thousands, hundreds of programs. So they said no more tied programs. We just untie it into a lump sum. So it's a amount, not scheme. Second thing. Third, they came out with a formula for devolution, which was probably the most critical factor of Kerala's decentralization. A formula. You can challenge the formula, but it's a formula. And the formula gives about 35-40% weightage to backwardness, then population area, all those kind of things. You can improve the formula. So once this was done, money flowed to every part of Kerala, more to the backward areas, and it went untied. And people use it for what they felt was a priority. So all schemes were compressed and taken away, and this untied money, this was a brilliant, I don't think we were very conscious, but in hindsight, that was which laid Kerala's decentralization. A lot of local freedoms, people are not quite happy, okay, that scheme is gone, doesn't matter, but we have no money. We have now more money, we can decide how to spend the money. So this is something which really carried the day. Then, the governance part. How do you carry the governance without upsetting it? As I told you, all our systems are for centralized governance. Now for decentralized governance, you need new systems which you can't create. And we have not been able to do it even after 20 years. But we came out with interim operating systems. All designed, mostly based on your understanding, by discussion, by dialogue, getting best practices, using common sense. So a lot of interim operating systems were put in place for budgeting, for planning, for account keeping, for everything. So the old system was gone. The new system has not yet come in place, but there was something to hold during the transition, so that governance collapse was prevented. And the third part is the development part. That I told you, by giving freedom for local application, they tried that. So They must have told you that our approach was Big Bang. At one go, in a space of, let's say, 7-8 months, 2 governments decided that we will have big decentralization. It's an act of faith, not that it is very rational calculation and all that. But from seeing decentralization in Kerala for a very long time and working in Government of India as Secretary to Government of India in charge of Panchayati Raj, the rural local governments, I am convinced that if you really want to decentralize, you need a Big Bang. Because power cannot be devolved in degrees. If Kerala had tried with the same political will to devolve in 2-3 years, this would not have happened. Because after some time, you know who is losing power. Then they will go and put some checks and balances. Here, nobody knew. In a jiffy, everything was gone. And they realized it much later. And it was a populist move, so they couldn't oppose it. So, I think, provided you have the capacity to manage the transition, Big Bang is something which works. If decentralization is to be done, it cannot be done in degrees. And once you have decentralization, it's called reversals. That is, you give money and then put the accounting systems. You give responsibility and then build capacity. You give powers and then build systems. So, it's a reverse. But this reverse, you have to really be on the toes, otherwise neither the old will be there nor the new will come. And then the state, another important thing is, why do you decentralize? People will ask. It's not just for the heck of it. What? It's a political decision. Basically, it's a political decision. And you have to have very clear objectives, goals and objectives. Why do you want decentralization? So Kerala being left of center, whoever rules in Kerala, whether it's the left or the right, they are broadly left of center in ideology compared to other state governments across the country. So they said, this is humanizing the state. The state has become a little arrogant, distant from the people. So we want to get people and the state closer together. So that was one of the overarching goals. Then we want people to participate. We had this public action model, but that was adversarial public action. People agitating against the government. Can you have constructive public action? Will the people come, talk to the elected leaders and work out a local development which is acceptable to both? So there is greater trust in government. And local production can be exploited. Local resources can be mobilized. So that was another objective. The third big objective in India is called Antyodaya. It's Gandhiji's favorite thing of reaching out to the last person. Antya means the last person. So unto the last. So we need, a lot of people have been left out of Kerala's development in spite of its egalitarian development. So to bring them into the mainstream was another objective. And then we dared to say that openly, reducing leakages, meaning reducing corruption, is also an objective of decentralization. There are a lot of fears that decentralization leads to more corruption. If you ask me, corruption has come down, but not come down to the extent we anticipated. A work done by a local government costs less than a work done by the government, even now. But we're a little worried that corruption is increasing even at local government level. So that's going to be a major challenge. Then Kerala went in for a campaign. You can go in for a campaign only if you're very sure. Because campaign means you're raising people's hopes. And then you can't look foolish. You have to deliver. So campaign has the other secret advantage, because once you commit to a campaign, you can't withdraw. So once the elected leaders committed to the campaign to decentralize, they were forced to go, even if some of them didn't like. So that is an advantage of a campaign. The disadvantage is you can't suddenly withdraw. People's hopes will be roused and you have to deliver. So that was the advantage of a campaign. And another important point, which is it's a great idea, one of the greatest ideas of Kerala's decentralization, is what they call voluntary technical core. That word is no longer used. VTC we called it. It's a fairly educated state. There are a lot of retired people from different walks of life. There are even scientists from NASA staying in the villages of Kerala after retirement. Doctors, professors. A lot of them are there in the villages. So the idea was to use them. We all talk of lack of capacity of local governments. This capacity cannot be provided by officials. So along with officials, in a formal sense, not informal, in a formal sense, we created this VTC, They could come, they could give ideas, they could even write out the local projects for the panchayats. It was an outstanding idea. It didn't really succeed. Now VTC has become very weak and almost withered away. But that is something which needs to be revived. This VTC would be a great idea all over the world, where you engage citizens who have some expertise or at least interest, if not expertise, to come and give a few hours in a year for the local government, which they voluntarily will. Then, of course, they would have told you in great detail about the capacity building part, so I'm not getting into it. That again was a textbook kind of capacity building. Resource persons, and Kila has only 3 or 4 faculty, even now. But it relies on trainers on call, and whose quality has been increasing. Initially, we just picked up people whom we knew. But now there is an investment in the trainers. Investment in the trainers on call, not in the mainstream trainers. That is again a great takeaway. For local governments, you need thousands and thousands of trainers. And you need qualified trainers on whom you invest so that you keep their qualities high. So Kila adopted that model, and it has been successful even now. And then learning from the leaders. See, based on my experience, I can tell you about 1/3 of the local governments are very good. If you reflect on the local governments of your country, it will be broadly true. And 1/3 of the 1/3 are really outstanding. And 1/3 of the bottom 1/3 will be really at the other end. So let's not mention that. But this 1/3 is good. And 1/3 of the 1/3 will be top class. So what's called school of practice. You can't keep and go and talk to 1,000 local governments every time. So the idea is to develop about 100 panchayats. That's a new idea of Kila. 100 panchayats, maybe about 150. Invest in them. They are good. They can respond. They can perform. And then others will learn in a hub and spoke model from them. So it becomes a automatic capacity building. So this is a great idea which Kila has been kind of piloting, which they are now trying to get into some formal system. Then, of course, which they mentioned, the child-friendly panchayat. This is called action research. You have a great idea, but you can't impose it. It's a decentralized setup. You can't go and tell you go and do this for the child. So you work with the local government, not with one local government, with a series of local governments. What can you do for children? Let's discuss together. It's a very time-consuming and at times a painful process because it takes a long time. So you sit with them and they will say, this is what we can do, this is what we can't do. And then you come out with a set of guidelines based on what is doable, what is acceptable. This is called, there's no name for it proper, but it's a kind of an action research. So new development ideas, you're trying to develop from below in consultation. Many of these things which you have asked, they all came from below. None of them were our creation. Somebody comes with a bright idea, then we find it's very good, socially very good, but then how do you do it? So you talk to them, go to the grassroots, and then try to... Now Kila has again started on what could be an aged-friendly panchayat. That's going to be one of the biggest challenges of Kerala. Kerala has the largest number of aged people in India. 12.6% of Kerala's population by 2011 census is above 60. And it is expected to go up to 20% by 2021. And by 2025, it will be of international standards with about 25% of our people being above 60 because of high longevity. And then that's going to be a challenge at the local government because they're close. You can't leave it to the government. So how do you tackle this challenge? Kila is now trying to sit with local governments and how the community, the religious institutions can contribute a lot. The local governments can contribute. How do you come together for a aged-friendly Kerala? So these are some ways of doing capacity. Then what are the achievements of Kerala? The most visible achievement, which is accepted all over India, is the methodology of participatory planning. So India is now going in for what is called GPDP. Somebody must have mentioned it to you, Gram Panchayat Development Plan. All the 248,000 Gram Panchayats of India are preparing a local development plan. And they have followed largely the methodology developed in Kerala. So that is a major thing. And it's generic. It can be implemented anywhere. And it can't be improved much. So anywhere in the world, this is possible. The second important decentralization, I think there was an exclusive topic on that, the fiscal decentralization. A lot of features of fiscal decentralization I will not get into. Most important is you give money in a practically untied fashion. You're not saying use it for education, use it for roads, but you are giving it with a framework. So there is lot of freedom in local decision making. Only then people will come for planning. Only then panchayats will be interested. Otherwise they think that we are implementing what the state government is telling us. So that is again, that's a very important thing. The second important thing is the formula based funding. You will not believe it if I tell you the chief minister of the state, I cannot say cannot, will not give one additional rupee to his own panchayat. That has been the culture which we have developed over 20 years. Not even 1 rupee. There are a lot of demands, but they will not give because we are now committed to a formula. So which means the poorest panchayats, most distant panchayats, belonging to a party which is not on talking terms with the ruling party, but still you will get what is due to you because it is not anybody allotting the money, it's a computer which allots the money. I'm not joking. I don't think a minister or secretary ever knows how much money is going. It's a computer program and before the budget it's printed and given to the finance minister. So there's no discretion in allocation of funds, which is very important for local development, for intra-regional differences and keeping the state in a whole is very, very important. This formula-based allocation of funds. So fiscal decentralization, we have several features because there is a great fiscal decentralization expert, public finance expert, one Roy Ball. He was in the Andrew Young School of Policy Studies, Atlanta. So he has designed about rules of decentralization. So once we tried to put Kerala's decentralization vis-a-vis rules, and we found 9 out of 12 rules we are following automatically, though we didn't know the rules before we did it. So it's a textbook decentralization. A third great thing, which has a lot of future in rest of India, is, which you had a special class on that, how the community-based groups, the self-help groups, can work with local governments without losing their identity and independence. It's a very delicate relationship. One shouldn't swamp the other. So, structuring that relationship and making it a very viable partnership, not one under the other. The local governments want the SHGs to be under them. We said, no, you'll work with them. So very, very delicate because there are politics, a lot of things are there, power equations. So they are working together and I think there was an exclusive lecture on that. Then using NGOs for local capacity, which has been done. You have an accreditation process where you accredit an NGO, they can execute a public work, do training for a panchayat and do all this. But it's through a very, very transparent process so that you can't favor an NGO, and NGOs of repute alone have been accredited, not any fly-by-night NGOs. So this is again an interesting model. Then there's institutions. Ultimately, local government system will depend on institutions. The Constitution has prescribed 2 institutions, the State Election Commission and the State Finance Commission, which is constituted every 5 years. Election Commission is a permanent body. So if you analyze the election commissions of India, the Election Commission of Kerala is the strongest because they delimit the constituencies. So government cannot interfere in the electoral process. It's completely left to the freedom of the State Election Commission. For delimitation, you have a delimitation commission, which is headed by the State Election Commissioner. So no state in India has the system. Then the State Finance Commission is very critical for deciding the allocation and deciding the formula, everything. Kerala has had 5 finance commissions. And the only state to have implemented the 5th Finance Commission is Kerala, and I think 1 or 2 other states are now about to implement. So this again, it is constitutional, it's mandatory, somebody can go to the court, but still most states in India are in the 4th Finance Commission stage. Then there are 2 unique institutions, unique to Kerala, what are called the Ombudsman for local governments. To look at charges of corruption, a High Court judge, very powerful Ombudsman, which the 13th Finance Commission at the national level recommended that whole of India should follow. Then we have what is called an appellate tribunal. The local governments take a lot of judicial, semi-judicial decisions, like licensing, permits. So you can't, earlier the appeals used to go to officials. We said you can't, officials cannot sit in judgment over local governments. It should be a tribunal of a district judge, a judicial officer. So these are 2 unique institutions. So these unique institutions ensure the autonomy of the local governments, ensure adherence to the rule of law. At the same time, they prevent interference by the executive. So this is the feature. Then another excellent feature of Kerala's decentralization, which of course we didn't create, it came from below, the local government associations. I think you had several sessions on that and you had interaction. This is again very, very critical. We realize that local government associations play multiple roles. Most important role is advocacy. Second, protest when you are withdrawing. Certain reality check. We'll like to do so many things, but they'll come and tell you, no, this can't be done. These are the risks. So, for policy feedback, for so many things, you can use the local governments and local government associations. And they are a powerful lobby. And they can prevent rollback because they are politically powerful. They are of the same political color as the state politicians. So they have, and they are the budding politicians of future. So they are a very powerful lobbying group. Another interesting feature, which is unique in my entire career, I just retired 6 months back, of 36 years in the Indian Administrative Service, I've never seen such an effective mechanism. It's called a coordination committee. It's very, very important because decentralization creates more problems than it solves. And you can't afford things to wait. So a local government says, sir, we have got this order, but we are not able to do it. What do we do? I can't give an oral answer because it has got implications, financial implications, legal implications. Somebody can go to the court. But they are all governmental decisions. So you can't just give vague replies. So we came out with a system headed by the minister with the secretaries concerned, including the finance secretary, where we sit every Wednesday, 100 problems come to take a decision on all the 100 problems and send it back through a formal government letter or an order or even sometimes rule. So this fast track response to issues from the field is very critical, particularly in the first 5 years of decentralization. And this is not to help a panchayat, to clarify, so that there is a rule of law emerging from on the basis of what is really required. Then another unique feature of Kerala's decentralization, which I think you have partly understood, which we didn't have any idea in the first 5 years. Care and compassion, if I may use the word, people with disabilities, children, aged, people with mental challenges, people who are dying, palliative care. These kind of things we find that local governments are very good at doing, not directly through the bureaucracy, but in partnership with NGOs and the community. So, this has again been a success, unexpected success of the local governments, this care and compassion schemes covering different segments of society. And another thing is good local models. That's the beauty of decentralization. There must be 100 models on water supply, all developed independently. And one can learn from the other. That is again one of the strong arguments for decentralization. There is no centralized solution to many local problems, and you give them the freedom, and then they are worth. And many of the solutions are much better than what government ever thought in the past. So this freedom to experiment is again something. So these are some of the big achievements of Kerala's decentralization. What did we miss? After 20 years, I can tell you what we missed. One of the important things we missed was citizen education. Because there was a fear that if you do too much of citizen education, they will turn against the local government and local governments will collapse. That is a fear. But I think citizen education needs to go along with decentralization. The demands for decentralization is equally important. Otherwise, you'll have a governmental structure cloning itself at the local government level, but not which is participatory. Then, since, as I told you, it is a highly risky thing, giving 1/3. So, we didn't, at that time, in development thinking also, this governance focus was not very important in the beginning. We started maybe after 10 years. So, in decentralization, the governance focus, participation, zero corruption, accountability, should be there along with the initial package. Our package was basically participatory planning, and we thought there were some governance elements in it. But now I feel that there should be enough governance element, and the focus should be not on projects, but on services. Our focus was on projects. So good roads have come up, good hospitals have come up, good child centers have come up, but the more should be on services. The services, particularly services for the bottom 1/3 of the population. So the service delivery focus We started again 10 years after decentralization. But one thing is, unless you have it from the beginning, to graft them in at a later stage is very, very difficult, because governmental systems don't accept new ideas that easily. So that is again a challenge. Then we spend a lot of time, lot of emphasis on process, less on systems. Now hindsight tells me that it should be both. The process is very important in decentralization, but the systems are also very, very important. Then we didn't spend enough time on the formal accountability system, the audit, the accounting system, which we started more than 11 years after decentralization. So in the beginning we said, let them strike root, let us not disturb. So we kept a lot of things aside. So that was again something which we missed. Then another area where is very intriguing, the local government resources of Kerala are the highest in the country. But still, they are collecting less than 50% of what they can be collecting at the current rates. So local resource mobilization is very, very critical. Whatever they can, affordability. But we should never forget it. Probably we didn't give it the importance it required, though we didn't underplay it also. Next comes the regulatory administration. All our local governments, though they are supposed to be developmental entities, have a lot of regulation. Particularly land use is regulated by the local government. The coastal areas are protected by the local governments. The water bodies are protected by local governments. But here, there has been a regulatory failure due to pressures of development, builders, powerful lobbies. They have had damaged Kerala's environment, particularly in the hills, considerably, and the coasts, which we have realized later, much later. But this regulatory part, so I'm saying that's a governance package, development, regulation, system, process. So this is all which we have learned after a great deal of experience. Then in capacity building, we focused on rules, we focused on processes, we focused on schemes, we focused on concepts like poverty, gender, environment. But we didn't focus on management. How do you manage a meeting? How do you manage personnel? How do you manage an institution? A primary health center is an institution. So managing a hospital requires a different skill set. And what is a skill set? You can give it to an elected leader. This is something which we are now grappling. So in our capacity building, which I told is near textbook, this is one area where we could do more. Then one sad area, though we have a lot of good models, I told you, for tribal development. I don't know whether you understand what is tribal development. In India, we have ethnic groups. It's about 7.5% of national population. They're called tribals, scheduled tribes. They are constitutionally classified as scheduled tribes. And Kerala has only 1%, little more than 1%. But in those areas, Panchayat Raj has not had any positive effect. Somehow, I don't know. I myself tried, a lot of people have tried. Somehow panchayats are not doing very well in tribal development. It requires a whole lot of study, but that is one of the negatives of which we are quite ashamed. Then another area which we missed was monitoring a performance right from the beginning. We started monitoring after 15 years. But right from day one, this monitoring, getting into the monitoring habit is also very, very critical. Now, what are the challenges of what? So, another great lesson from Kerala, since we have 20 years experience, what could be the second generation challenges? Maybe if you ask the basics of decentralization, Kerala has done fairly well. Much better than all the states, I can openly say. But second generation challenge, which other states will face after 15 years, we are facing. I'll quickly, one is in this planning. Now planning is basically local negotiation. It's not based on local data. So how do you convert planning to more of local data and get into more spatial plans where you have a lot of spatial analysis and the elected leader takes a view. It can't be just on local negotiations only. So you have to move planning to a little more, I wouldn't call it scientific, more a rational basis, which is accepted by the community and the elected leaders. The next challenge in planning is multi-level planning. What is health? Health has a primary concept, a secondary health, a tertiary health. All this will require multi-level planning. Otherwise, you will do something here, something here. They are all sliced. You can't slice this. And health has got so much of spin-off effects. And so much of things getting into health, your sanitation, water, everything, even your habit, your drinks, everything gets into the health. So, this multi-level planning is very important for health, education, for local economic development. You can't say Panchayat alone will do something for economic development. So, this inter-tier integration, inter-tier is something very complex. It's not simple. We have tried several times, but never succeeded. But it's very critical when you want to have an integrated development, which is important. So that's another challenge. Then should you have an annual plan? Can't you have a 5-year plan? Can't you have a 10-year plan? So that big investments come. Otherwise, we cut everything according to the annual budget. This is again the biggest failure of Kerala's decentralization. What I call the constituency mentality. Beautiful, democratic. But Kerala's funds get divided into 20,000. Then you will not have big infrastructure. So can we have medium-term plan where you'll have a big bridge and a small thing where a house is constructed? This is again a challenge which they are now addressing through what they call district planning. Then local economic development. Kerala is not an agrarian economy. It needs jobs. We are the largest number of unemployed people in the country. And Kerala has exported 2.5 million youth, particularly to the Gulf and to Europe, on jobs. Initially they were low-end jobs, but now they are slightly higher. And now you can't send people out always. You need to create jobs. So, and can local governments do? It's a moot point. We really don't know how much a local government can contribute to local economic development of not the agrarian kind. Agrarian kind is fairly easy. That is again a challenge. Then another interesting second generation challenge. I guess a good number of you would be officials. How does an official get the strength? It's also from the hierarchy. If you take an official hierarchy, there will be some top quality officer somewhere in the hierarchy. And that officer sends positive signals down. Maybe at the district level, state level, regional level, mid level. But with decentralization, you slice the hierarchies. So the district collector cannot influence the Gram Panchayat because there is no hierarchy. It's all with the Panchayat. So this is a challenge. How do you build the capacity of an officer with the local government when that hierarchy is gone? It's a second generation, no easy solution. Because the strength of hierarchy is gone. So, and you can't substitute it that easily. The next, of course, I said this hyper-democracy, small projects, each constituency, each ward having its projects, which you must have seen when you did this. And another big second generation challenge. Now we have what is called rights-based development. India is moving into that era. Right to food, right to work, right to information, right to education, right to people with rights of people with disabilities. So we have about 7 or 8 legislations in the last 10 years. Now a local government and rights-based law. How do they get together? It's law, which means you don't have a local freedom. But at the same time, they seem to be equipped for handling this. So this is again a second generation challenge. And another major challenge for a state like Kerala, the climate change, the ecological challenges. How does a local government face an ecological challenge? Because your boundaries are small. But unless you think big, I don't think water bodies can be protected by government. So you are protecting your water bodies. You are protecting your clean surroundings. You are protecting your coast. And they're trying to understand a larger development impact of these things is a challenge. Otherwise, we are very happy, get a good building here, we get the building tax. Why should you bother about this water body? So this is something which we are grappling. And urbanization. Kerala is the most fast urbanizing state in the country. And urbanization challenges are beyond many local governments. So do you come together? Do you act together? Mobility, waste. These are again scary things as far as Kerala is concerned. Aging, of course, is a challenge which I mentioned, which of course I expect local governments to do well. Since I think you focus on capacity building. Now capacity building itself is going to a new generation. It's not capacity as we think, not based on a training needs assessment, as people seek. And it will vary from moment to moment. Today I have a solid waste problem. a city will come to Kila, please help me structure a solid waste solution. Then they go, and it could be some other panchayat saying that we have the problem of the aged. Can you help us? So this is the new generation capacity building on demand, on local problems. When they say, I don't know, help us. Not that we teach you rules and regulations and processes. So this is again a challenge. Now, to conclude, very important thing, decentralization is not one-off solution. It's not a one-off event. Even after 20 years, it's still work in progress. So it's a big lesson. Otherwise, we finish everything off and wash our hands, the whole thing will collapse. So you are supporting it without guiding it. Or you are without controlling it, not guiding. So how do you nurture local governments without interference, without unnecessarily interfering is a challenge. And we are all government servants, we'll all be tempted. Those fellows are doing wrong things, let's hit them. So this is something which is a lesson which Kerala gives. And decentralization gives you a lot of space for reform, which you can never do at the state level. Whether it's right to information, social accountability, social audit, citizen scorecard, citizens charter. You can't do it at the state level. But with local governments, you can do this. So local governance opens up a whole range of possibilities of governance reform, development reform, rights-based reform. It's a thing. Then this, you must have heard, I told you about the rule of 1/3. Then the missions, somebody must have taught you. Kerala is now coming out some missions. So missions can now have the potential of addressing many of the challenges which I told you. For want of time, I will not get into it. The last point which I wanted to tell you, which is the most important point, I call it soft devolution. By devolution, what do you mean? Give money, give powers, created rules, everything. But the most important thing of devolution is not this. What is recognizing a local government as a local government. It's more a behavioral, emotional kind of thing. A panchayat leader comes, the collector respects the panchayat leader as a head of the local government, not as a very junior politician. So that gives you a tremendous sense of responsibility. Yes, I am being respected as a local government. I have a role to play. So this recognition, this space given to them, which is more attitudinal, behavioral, not formal, is what ultimately strengthens decentralization. How does a minister deal with a local government? Just like a fellow politician. How does a collector or a chief secretary deal with a district panchayat president? Again, as equals. So once you get that, and I think Kerala has got that, which is what is keeping it going. So first question is answered. Second question is answered. Indicators, I broadly mentioned, but the best indicator of decentralization is you are having resources which you can decide on. Whether it is own resources or, that's the best indicator of decentralization. You can forget all of that. How much of money do you have on which you can take the decision to use? That is the best part of the decentralization. Organogram is not important. Yeah. Block becomes a bit of a problem in Kerala because we have large gram panchayats and relatively small district. So it's very difficult to give more powers to the block. But district will get a focus when they do this multi-level planning. So district will improve once you have this multi-level planning and this. If women reservation is pulled out, what would happen? I am sure 1/3 will not get elected. But it will not be too low either. So I must confess, all over India, this is keeping up due to the reservation policy. Poverty alleviation in Kerala. See, we don't have the conventional poverty alleviation. Kerala went in for land reforms in the 50s and 60s. Kerala has a universal public distribution system. So food, land, and it is a very strong social security system with 1,000 rupees being given to almost half the population per month for old age, disability and things of the kind. So it's a multi-pillar attack. And now the Kudumbashree thing is topping it all. So it's a multi-pronged strategy of poverty reduction, and then health is very important. We have the best health indicators. Now the latest figures, which I also find it difficult, official figures of Government of India, our IMR has come down to 6, which is equivalent to what is there in UK and better than US. It's too difficult to believe, but it has come out of this human development based approach with this multiple pillars. And over years, it's not, it started now, has really helped in bringing Kerala's poverty to single digit levels. Plus, of course, what we didn't consciously plan, people going to the Gulf, to US and sending back the money. If you ask me what has really brought down Kerala's poverty, it is educated people going abroad and sending money. That has brought down your economic poverty to, it's hardly, that extreme poverty is very limited, barring in some coastal areas and tribal areas. There is absolutely no challenge in getting fund from government. It's a formula set, it comes automatically, irrespective of your position as a local government. Budget tracking is still weak, but now they have gone into electronic thing. Our treasuries are getting computerized, and I think in another 6 months, you will know online how much money is being spent every minute and on what purpose. But so that will be another 6 months, because at treasury, every voucher-based tracking will be possible, which I think will be revealed to the public. Yeah, panchayat date, because our panchayats are linked to treasuries. So each beneficiary you pay for a house, then it can be captured. We don't have to have. This is there, but with this new things of Government of India coming up, GIS based, so you can not only get the payment, but you can also see the house, you can also see the assets. So it's moving in a direction. I think 1.5 years, it will be quite a good situation. Yeah, preparing development plan in a comprehensive manner is, now we are sectoral, we want to move to a district and a larger thing. Yeah, planning process timeline is a challenge, but it is a trade-off between process and precision. So if you want process, it's always time consuming. General right to information is absolute in Kerala. So you just can give and you'll get it within a few days. So nobody can ever, and there's a very strong mechanism to ensure it. The Gram Sabha is a weak thing. It's not been very functional. So the only way we can make it functional is to get the Kudumbashree women more active into Gram Sabha. So at least 50% of the people, or a good number can attend. Accountability is now more informal, because social audit is not at operational in Kerala. The other accountability is still informal. Checks and balance I mentioned. Political parties have a lot of influence, because panchayats are political parties and political parties issue directions to panchayats. So they have a lot of influence, but then since Kerala is the differences between political parties is rather narrow, they can't be irresponsible. So there's an implication. And that's a very interesting thing. A lot of people say, should you have political parties in panchayats? Ideally, you should not have partisan politics in panchayats, but it has got the advantage, because if a panchayat misbehaves, then immediately that hits the ruling party if that is a ruling party panchayat, or the opposition if it's an opposition panchayat. Immediately they intervene. So there's a bit of positive also about it. This mediation on grassroots level conflict, which they do informally, a few panchayats do formally and very successfully. But this is part of a normal panchayat member's life, some kind of mediation of conflict. It's not formal, it's not given by law. But at the local level, you are elected, accepted, they have to involve in small local disputes. Child participation, of course, they have mentioned, child-friendly local government, they would have mentioned. Mainstreaming of PWDs. Now we have an act, very powerful national act, which the panchayats are supposed to implement partially by government, and about 5% of the funds have to be set apart for persons with disabilities. So that it's in the initial stage. That act was notified only on April 14th or something. Agricultural labor and caste, yes, unfortunately. In India, agricultural labor largely belongs to the scheduled caste and also these other so-called lower castes. It's an unfortunate economic thing now, and only a transformation of the agricultural economy can change that. And it's not coming that quickly at the national level. In Kerala, of course, since the agrarian economy has come down, it's not that much of a problem. When Kila was formed, we didn't have decentralization. So there was no challenge at the beginning. But then they did a very good thing. See, Kila was formed about 28 years ago. I think the first building was constructed in 1990. And for a governmental system, 100% government, you'll find it quite good. The old infrastructure is still well maintained. What they did was, that's a very interesting question you asked. They didn't do it through the public works department. They collected money from every local government. At that time, only village panchayats were there. So each village panchayat donated 10,000 rupees. They purchased this land and then constructed it not following the governmental system. They got a very good architect, designed it properly for long standing construction and constructed it. So that was the second success. The third, they got a Kerala cadre officer who had worked as registrar of National Institute of Rural Development to come and be the first director. So who knew how an educational institution has to be structured. So you'll find, I'm not boasting, you'll find Kila staff are very polite. Not that we are all polite outside. You go to another office, you will not find them same polite. Because that culture is, once you create a culture, then it develops. That pride in working, they work at 3 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock. So that culture was inculcated, and then the whole system, food, rooms, everything, it was because of that first director who brought in experienced system. How does Kila motivate government for the autonomy? Only performance. If any institution is performing, government will not interfere. The moment you are not performing, then they will start interfering. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? So far Kila has delivered, and it's a wrong thing, because having worked in government, including as Secretary to Government of India and the Chief Secretary of the State, I can tell you government doesn't really give you autonomy. You take autonomy and keep it. So if you are well performing, nobody will ever... Yeah, there are a lot of challenges. Motivation is basically by performing. See, now Kila is such an institution that you go to any state and use the word Kila, it is understood. It doesn't happen for a state institution, because states are almost like countries in India. And then because of this, because certain tasks are very clear, what Kila has to do is very clear. If Kila is delivering it, like you need to train, one of the ambitions of government was in the first 100 days, you train every elected representative. So tall order. But Kila did. And then another is more informal. The persons who come here, the mayor is a very senior political functionary. District Panchayat president is senior than many ministers. So when they come and they all give informal feedback to their political parties. So Kila is doing very well. So that image of Kila performing and the actual Kila performing is helping preserve his autonomy. That is my understanding. I've been chairman Kila for 11 years and I've seen Kila since 1996. Though I've seen it since 1990, but directly looked after its working since 96. And I think this is the secret of their being. Then another, I forgot to tell you, see, in decentralization, for policy, lot of feedback is required. So Kila has been able to give very real feedback, which is valued by the secretary, by the minister. That I forgot to tell you. It's not performance alone. You really know this is not working. Sir, in mission, this structuring is not happening. Who will tell you? The Panchayat will tell you much later. Kila will give you the advance warning, and they will probably, and because they do a lot of this action research, they are able to give a solution also. So all this keep Kila strong. Anyway, thanks. I've completed in the time given, and hopefully you had a good monsoon training here, and you will remember this. All the best.
If you have any questions to ask him directly, then we can do it now. You tell your country name at least.
Working I'm from Bhutan. My question is, in Bhutan, we don't have any institute in capacity building institute in Bhutan, nor from government, neither from NGOs. So can sir please suggest suggest something that how we can uh, uh, establish that in Bhutan?
For that, Kila has a very good example. It's not a very costly institution. So, any small program, and then you build it over in phases, not one big. This was a very small, was single building institution 25 years back. It is so to start small, but have a very good institution, and then learn from institutions like Kila, how exactly you go. And the biggest advantage is they have trainers on call. So instead of having 10 faculty, you'll have 2 faculty or a director, deputy director kind of thing, and have about 200 trainers on call, on whom you train. And that will be the nucleus of an institution, and you can start. But till you establish an institution, you can work in partnership with institutions like Kila, though Kila is slightly far off from Bhutan, because geographically it's very distant. But we have the habit of helping other states and training. The National Institute of Rural Development is there. It's called National Institute of Rural Development and Panchayat Raj. There, of course, all the South Asian countries have a partnership with them, and you can also get in touch with them, the Ministry of Rural Development, and they can, the initial to get started. Thereafter, it's easy.
Sir, I'm Mizan from Bangladesh. I would like to know, sir, that in our country we have many of innovations since 90, but we are facing problem to institutionalize it. Please give us some suggestion or advice. How can we could do? Since 1990, we do not have any military governance. So this civil government we are having, but we have enough innovations. But how can we institutionalize it?
One issue you find in is both a positive and a negative. The civil society is very dominant in Bangladesh. In big NGOs, international NGOs are there. It is both an advantage and, in a sense, for local governments, it could be a disadvantage also. But for institutionalization is what the Kila model. That is, you find one innovation, study it in depth, see what are the characteristics, how far is it relevant to other areas or local governments, and then you convert it into a protocol. Like for example, the palliative care in Kerala was done by few NGOs in a district north of this place. Then we realized that palliative care is required in whole of Kerala. Then how do you develop a model? So you went and studied that thing, then got this community, the panchayat, the NGO, the doctor, who will play what. So it's in a sense you make a protocol and then try to expand it. And if it is a good thing, it gets expanded. And then after some time, it's automatically institutionalized. Like Kila's experience is precisely that. Many of these things get institutionalized. For your information, when I was a 15-year-old boy studying in Standard 10, we used to shout Joy Bangla in 1971.
Thank you, sir. I'm Monica Mitra, Research Officer, National Institute of Local Government, and this is also like same Kila, and we also have the partnership. Yes. Okay, so last time also artist state minister comes as a guest of honor, and
I was here that day.
Yes. So we have planning to do together many works, but I'm personally interested to know about the funding process of Kila from the state government. Actually, we have the, I already shared with our director, sir, because we have huge client, but it is really tough to train within 5 years, just after the election. So that mechanism, the funding is our main challenge because we don't get the revenue money at a time. So how it is possible for the state government to hand over the money to the Kila? And another question is that regarding Kila's faculty, they are only 3. And they all hire the resource person. And resource person, I don't know what is their honorarium, or they are willingly do it, or others. So that mechanism also I want to learn.
Now, regarding budget, Kila has two sources of budget. One is from the state government. 20 crores. Yeah, it's 20 crores. I mean, I think you will understand the word crore. It's 10 million. So it's 20 crore rupees now, which is quite good. In addition, it can access funds from a big scheme in Government of India called Rashtriya Gram Swaraj Abhiyan, RGSA. That is a big name. And that has got about 600 crores at the national level. So Kila can hopefully get about 15, 20. Yeah, up to 15 you can go. So together they should have about 30, 35 crores, which is more than enough for the work which they do. Technically, they can charge a panchayat, which is there in the original order, but they don't. They can ask a panchayat for each training you pay at least 100 rupees, 200 rupees. So that provision is there. That also you can use. Panchayats have their own money. If you run short of money, you can ask them not very heavy rates, but reasonable rates, 100 rupees or 200 rupees, at least covering the cleaning charges or food. So, and panchayats will feel more interested. So these are this thing. And then now there's a lot of donor interest, not now, for last 15, 20 years in funding capacity building. So some institutionalization part and all that could also really help. Then if honorarium, how much? Honorarium is not great. It's only 800 rupees for a full day. $10 for a full day. But one important feature of Kila's external faculty, they don't come for money. They come for the joy of teaching. I'm sure all over you'll find persons who are interested in these kind of things. With your NGO background, you have a lot of people who are interested in these kind of things. So it's a recognition to them to come and teach. They enjoy the thing. They enjoy the interaction with the panchayat. So basically, otherwise it's not a big honorarium. It should be at least 3-4 times, at least 2.5 times if it is reasonable. But because of this, but more important, which we learned the hard way, initially we used to just call a person, ex officio, you are a deputy director, come and teach panchayat. But later they started identifying persons based on their quality and retaining them if they are good quality. That's a challenge. And at the national level, they are going in for what is called certification of trainers, which I would strongly advocate. So you set certain standards, there will be a lot of pressures. So certified trainers are there in different subjects. You certify them on a process, both pedagogic part and the knowledge part. And later, every 2-3 years, you can find out their quality and keep upgrading. That will be a very sustainable way of doing it. And National Institute of Rural Development is just starting the certification. And Kila has also plans. That is very important. Otherwise, it's all by common sense, which may not be always right.
Thank you. I'm from Bhutan. And my question is that out here it is 50% reserved for the women. So in Bhutan we are having less number participation in election. So may I know what are the methods to increase the number of women in the election? Like say here 50% for women, reserved seats for women.
Yeah, I think reservation is what did the trick. Before that it used to be less than 10%. So because we initially brought 1/3 reservation, 1/3 came automatically. Then I think we made it in 2001, no? 50%. So it became 50. National level constitution says only 1/3, but I think 18 states in India have 50% reservation. So to start with, the reservation seems to be the only way to get women in. Later on, then you can withdraw.
Yeah, thank you.
That is the only.
Thank you.
But one thing which you can tell people there is, in India, the mandate is only 1/3 by law. But states have gradually moved from 1/3 to 50%. And there have been studies to say that women panchayat presidents perform better in the soft sectors, less corruption, more teamwork, more collegial function. So a lot of interesting evidence is also there. And I think recently UNFP has come out with UN Women has come out with a study on India's elected women representatives. If it is available, you can read. I don't know if it's in the public domain.
Okay, thank you for your informative, comprehensive speech here. We learned a lot from you. My name is Selim from Bangladesh. My question is that practice to policy. So many things, good practices are available in the panchayat level and ward level, village level actually. From which process is there any good practices, good things is recognized by the panchayat, block or district level, in which process this practice comes to the policy level, policy reform, is there any example or any?
I can give you at least 15, 20 examples, but I'll give you just 2 examples. One was a panchayat came out with a water supply. Because piped water supply is a priority in Kerala. People don't use the hand pumps. So a panchayat tried lot to get money from government. They didn't get it. This before decentralization. It was actually in 1995. So what they did is they came together, collected money from all persons in a graded fashion, put a piped water supply, and said we will meet the pumping charges, and community owned. And community will decide how much you will pump, how much in winter, how much in summer, how much in rainy season, and how much the poorer people will pay, how much the richer people, all internally decided. So this was documented. We also didn't know. When I joined as secretary local government in 96, this was brought to me. I went there and studied. A remarkable model. Now most panchayats in Kerala, if they want to do water supply, can do only according to that model. So we made it a policy. Then second was palliative care. People who are dying, you know what is palliative care? Palliative care means a person who is sure to die, who will never come back to life, needs to be treated. I mean, it's a human problem. It will be trauma, cancer, various kind of things. So we found a good NGO and working with religious groups, particularly Islamic groups, they came out with this fantastic model of youth going to this person. They're dying. And just cleaning their bed, chatting with them for 10 minutes, and then washing them if this is required. And the panchayat came in, the SHGs came in, the NGOs gave the profession like how much of morphine had to give. This we found in about 30, 40 panchayats in North Kerala. And we saw it, we studied it, called those groups, they made a presentation before the minister, but you'll have to convert it into a government policy. So we decided how much money you can give, how you'll give, where you'll get the doctor, where you'll get the volunteer. And now that has become at least 2/3 of panchayats are doing it very well. So it's all from below. This didn't strike us at all. Then one panchayat did a survey. They just did a survey for their local development and found out that about 40 children have mental challenges in a small panchayat. Even we are shocked. Then they didn't come to us. They called people, and there was one lady whose child himself was mentally challenged. She said, "I have got some training. I will come and teach." They hired a room, brought 30 children. This lady came and taught, and they collected some money and gave it. Now that has become a model, and we are now 70 such institutions. It's called Bud School. So Bud School came from below, water supply came from below, palliative care came from below. It's possible, but then, and then you make it into a structured program, not too restrictive, at the same time not too liberal that somebody can waste money in the name, and that is how it is done. State level.
Is there any example that this policy is transferred to the central level?
Yes. For example, this palliative care is now being taken by the SHGs in many states of India. They learn from Kerala. Similarly, we have learned something from there, and we try to do.
Thank you, sir. Harun from Afghanistan. From 1919, I mean from Independence Day or still to 2001, while throwing international community to Afghanistan, the administration system was very centralized. And based on 1966 Constitution, established the local governance department, but still in the president place. So, in 2004 Constitution says the centralized administration divided by two, local administration and central administration. In 2007, government established the independent directorate for local governance to control, manage, coordinate all local entities. So, in the new government, and their commitment to delegate the authority around 40% to the local entities, I mean provincial, district level. So the challenge, where is the problems? Political problems, they didn't accept these things. So the government decided that these 40% delegation will be only in planning and budgeting. So, and the second one is people scenes changing. How we can change the people scenes, political scenes, and so they will get decision together. This one.
Of course, I know how complex the Afghani situation is and simple solutions cannot be there. But one way of getting people in this is participatory planning. People develop a lot of interest. And in participatory planning, everybody gains. The rich fellow gains and the poor fellow gains. The farmer gains, the businessman gains. So when you tell them this is a budget for whatever is a given entity, preferably a smaller entity, and then say, let's prepare a plan for that. That enthuses a lot of people. And you have to actually give the plan. Otherwise, people will be violent. So we'll give you, let us say, $1,000 for this. And you do whatever you want. You decide. And give them some 8 on development ideas. They decide very well. There will be some interest. That's the first challenge, to get that interest. And then will be some implementation challenges, which in the Afghan situation will be quite severe in the beginning, like engineering, support and all that. But still, many of the villages have their natural thing to do. So that's one way of doing it. Second would be the self-help kind of movement. In India, it's totally women. There, of course, obviously it can't be totally women. So the self-help movement is again a very powerful thing which you are finding. People have similar interests, common interest group. Let's not call it self-help. Common interest group. Here could be artisans, here could be farmers, here could be some other this thing. So this common interest group doing something, giving a plan, getting some money for it, is also another way of grassroots democracy. These are the two things which we have tried, not only in Kerala, in India also. Yes. Yeah, that is, yes. It is very difficult, but you can say don't give everything. At least ask their suggestion, give them 10%. So what you start with whatever you can afford, and then see the results.
Thank you, sir. My name is Kumchun from Cambodia. I have a question. We are now living in the age of internet, Facebook, mobile phone, and all that. How has Kerala harnessed this new technology to promote local government strategically and systematically? And what will be like the future plan to even further harness this technology for the better good of local government? Thank you.
Though internet penetration and smartphone penetration is highest in Kerala, in the rest of India, of almost international standards, it has not been formally used in our governance system. Except that now we are starting Facebook, some messages, internet communication. Of course, internet communication is now basically through internet. Any message, otherwise we used to print and take it. But now I think last 4 or 5 years, it's all, you get the same day on the internet, you can communicate, write, give an email, get reply. So the internet part is working well, but not the social media. Social media has not been formally adopted. Government of India has been trying to get into social media like Twitter. Even the PM has a Twitter handle, Facebook. They are trying to communicate. But without informal communication among the Gram Panchayat groups, that is quite vibrant. They send the Facebook messages and all that. But there's one interesting use which I find is remarkable. It was done by a Panchayat on his own. They told you about the Gram Sabha, where the voters come and discuss. So since Kerala has a lot of people living abroad, working abroad, one Panchayat did a Skype Gram Sabha where all their persons were living in Europe and the Gulf. They came on Skype and talked to the villagers. So that was a great event. So that I thought was a very promising event. But otherwise, other than that, there is no formal policy. Social media for governance, I think there's no policy. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I'm Sutia from Cambodia. Again, the same as my friend. My impression for this, the whole week that I hear is I observe that a socialist party control a democratic state and working very hard to promote democratic decentralization. This is really amazing, That's what I observe actually. But at the same time, I also observe that there's here people talking about uniformity and also diversity. So it's kind of two of socialist value and democratic value being promoted simultaneously, and it really get along well. But I don't know how long will it get along with each other. And then this is the question about the sustainability of this democratic decentralization. I I don't know if one day the elected leader at the state level who do not really in favor of this democratic decentralization. So how does it affect the future of this democratic decentralization? How we are going to maintain that the sustainability of this democratic decentralization in Kerala?
For two reasons, I don't expect decentralization to be rolled back in the near future. One, Kerala's political parties, whether it be the Communist Party or the Congress Party, they all have cadre parties. So which means they have a village committee of the party, the block committee of the party, taluka committee and all that they have. So since 20,000 of their party men are in some position through the panchayat, not remunerative, but in a position of power, this will ensure, and there is no charismatic leader who can, in Kerala, because the Kerala politics is cadre-based, hardly anybody who can say that I will decide. It's a highly democratic system. So because of that, rollback is difficult. You can't please all your cadre people by taking away. More important, now money anywhere, any developed country, money gets sucked to certain more developed portions, whatever be the politics. Like in India, the poorest parts are Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and the ruling party is, the BJP is ruling there. But still more money will come to Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Kerala, Maharashtra, because they are more developed. Because they are more developed, money flows there. Because they can spend it better and all that. So, because of decentralization in Kerala, money has gone to the remote parts. Good money, not small money. Now, any government withdraws that, 1/3 of Kerala will run dry and the political consequences will be disastrous. So nobody will risk that. Because nobody knows the dynamics of withdrawing decentralization. It's big money and the remote area, suddenly you say withdraw, money will go to the richer places, the poorer places will not get. These are the two reasons which I feel will prevent decentralization. And one thing which can bring this thing is if local governments perform very badly or they become too corrupt, or, which is unlikely. Which is unlikely. So I have hope.
Yes. My name is Aung Shu from Myanmar, sir. So I just would like to give some suggestion to my country. Right now, our country just moving the democratic transition since 2010, but we have a lot of history and experience about under the military dictatorship for a long period. So we have a big gap between the government and the community. They have not engaged, and that's one problem. Another problem inside the government, the opposition party get power in 2015. So when we are trying govern the country, there's also a big gap between the elected person and bureaucratic institution. So like this, the current situation. So could you please any suggestion to get some good coordination, engagement between this government and community and the elected person and this bureaucratic institution? Thank you, sir.
This is community-wise, from the national situation, because India is like a different countries. So I can tell you it's relevant to a lot of this, even in poor areas, disaster-prone areas and all that. This self-help movement of women seems to be very promising. So the bottom 50 or 60% of women come as a self-help group and they decide, we'll not interfere. A lot of freedom, but basic account keeping and all that. And then they start representing the community in arguments, in discussion. So that seems to be a very promising way of community participation, more than the cooperatives. Earlier we tried to create cooperatives. But more than cooperatives, this women's self-help group, maybe just they collect very little money and then do some thrift and credit, but they seem to be growing in strength. And they don't grow too big to fight government also. That also they don't do. So it's a via media thing, and that seems to be a good kind of relationship which any new democracy or old democracy can try, because it is not destabilizing. In fact, it's stabilizing. So that's the only advice I have. Though I don't know the Myanmar condition other than reading in newspapers and articles. Yeah, thanks a lot. At the last day, very few people interact so much.
So, I mean, on behalf of all of you, let us thank Mr. Vijayanand, because usually we call him for the initial day, but then this time we thought, and he was also not here at that time, so conclusion will be easier, better, so that you cover everything by the end of the day. I think as a strategy that seems to be better. Yeah, that seems to be better. I think. Thanks a lot. And yeah. Okay, now I think we are almost into the conclusion part of the 6-day program, and one thing which we started with was I had said that we will ask some questions to you. You remember the question? Remember the question. So what I will try is, let you know her name. Yeah. So Nini will call you, and then we can come forward. We have a small present for you, which we will give. Okay.
Pasmore. Rosely, sir. Please come. First. One second. Second, sir. Salim Bhai.
സണ്ണി സാർ ഇങ്ങോട്ട് കയറി ഞാൻ കൊടുത്തോളാം. ഇങ്ങോട്ട് കയറി. അല്ല നോ നോ നോ
സാർ ഇതൊന്ന് പൊട്ടിച്ചു.
അല്ല ഇനി കണ്ടിന്യൂ.
മൂസ സാർ. ഹാരുൺ സാർ. സരിക മാം. One more, please. Shirab. Dema ma'am, please. Sana ma'am, please. Yashi ma'am, please come. Sunida ma'am, please come. ആരാനോട് പറഞ്ഞു? Bunna ma'am, please come. Bunna ma'am. Amiri sir, please come.
Please come, Kinley. Please come. Please come, Chandini ma'am. Please come, Yangshin. Myanmar. Please come, Tuya ma'am. Please come. Please come, Ugyen ma'am. Please come, Panni sir, Mission sir, please. Please come, Risa sir. Please come, Jackie Chan sir, please. Please come, Rata sir, Cambodia from. Please come, Somsegar, India. Okay. Please come, Manika ma'am. Please come, Imran sir. Last one, please come, Cambodia, Kim Chen. Okay. Okay. ഒരാളും കൂടി ഉണ്ടല്ലേ ഓക്കെ ഓക്കെ അഫ്ഗാനിസ്ഥാൻ സിദ്ധ മാം പ്ലീസ് കം സോറി ഓക്കെ സത്യ പ്ലീസ് കം കബോഡിയ സത്യ സാർ കാണാനില്ലായിരിക്കും Welcome to Jacob sir. Please come. Okay, thank you.
What was my question? By today, every name and we can do many. And our certificate കൊടുക്ക പോരെ കൊടുത്താൽ മതി പോരെ So I mean, our Bangladesh colleagues want to present us with something. So let's. അത് മതി
സർട്ടിഫിക്കറ്റ് വേണമെങ്കിലേ ഡീസെൻട്രലൈസ്ഡ് ആയിട്ട് കൊടുക്കാം ഒരാൾ സ്വീകരിച്ചു വേണ്ട
Rajesh wants to present a memento to Mr. Vijayanand. So please.
Exercise എങ്ങനെയാണ്?
Oh, okay.
Cambodian Decentralization founder.
Yeah.
Just
Now, finally, so he has not been talking so far. So finally, Yakub is going to talk.
Friends, so we are coming to end of this training program. You know, when Login advertised this training program, we called it a Killa learning offer, right? It wasn't a Login learning offer. It was a Killa learning offer. Why? Because Killa is a member of Login, right? It is a members offering to Login members. And you know, this was a very quickly planned program, and I thank the Killa team for developing this program quickly. We were able to call you, you applied, you have reached here, and at the end of the 6 days, you know why we gave this program, right? Because you know, to learn from experience of Kerala, there's no better institution to anchor you. You stayed in the institution. You have been able to see the training programs running on. Other faculty members have been involved in that. They've come for their sessions because they're completely involved, right? So the best of the Kerala experience, they have been able to bring you here. They've been able to plan. So what I wanted to say was, this program was completely planned by them. Login has only enabled you to come and you know, so get you here. But this program has been developed by them. They have of course taken our you know, suggestions and all of that. But this is their program, and we were always very confident they would. We hope you have found it useful, and we hope you also think of, some of you who have the resources, also think of similar programs where you can get. So, these are things, we are a network, right? We are a member-driven network, right? There is some resources available, but we depend on our members to drive the learning agenda. Kila, for all their expenses here, they have taken on the expenses, right? So that's how that, that is their contribution to the network, right? So I want to thank the Kila team. Dr. Joy Element is here, Professor Sunny George is here, JB Rajan, and 3 people have spent, including their holidays. This is holidays, yesterday and today. They've all been here, but 3 of us have spent their time. We had Professor Raghavan with us throughout, right? Sandosh has been here, helping you, not only here, right? Across the campus. And Nini has been here. She has learned all your names, right? So we especially thank them, and Bhaskaran also, who helped us on the field visits. Yeah. So we will be sending a survey form for you to assess it. Yeah, sorry, I really, and that was a mistake on my part. The Kudumbashri unit, which has been serving you food, right? Even on holidays, the tea, the food, right? So that, they have been, some advice was given to them how they should so they have customized it for your taste. It may not be exactly your taste, but still that you can manage. And no one has fasted, and I have not heard any complaints about the food, right? So we thank them also. We thank all the staff that have enabled this program. So you can access it. We will be sending a link. So we will be sending a link to access, but we'll also, as you leave, we will do an exercise there. There is an exercise to give your feedback. Okay. Today's lunch is a traditional Kerala lunch. The same unit they have prepared for you. Yeah, it is in this guest house. We will take you there, the straight ahead, this guest house, not your usual place. So this part of the guest house, and there will be they're also doing a cultural program for you, a short cultural program for you. Okay. No, before lunch, just before lunch. It's very short. It's very short. It's very short. Okay. So, and as you leave, regarding other things, we are here after lunch. You can contact me regarding any other things you want. And then we have the feedback exercise.
Normally the session comes to a close, but as usual, we have to have some sort of a feedback or evaluation kind of thing. The real one comes later. We'll just go to the...
Joya, one request. This relationship, if any of you at any point of time want to get into details, or your colleagues, you can get in touch with Kila. We in Kerala don't believe in intellectual property. So this is yours, common property.
No. At the end, just collect your certificates. They'll come. So just collect it. We are not doing a formal certificate giving process.